Okay, we're live tonight. So thank you, all of you, for being part of this streaming. It's very nice to have you all because I know you're experts in your field and you can bring a lot of clarity on relationships going on right now. It's not so easy. And I think the call for this is really about what's going on right now. I think we're going through a tough time. Everybody is. And really what has changed our lives is really the pandemic, and it definitely hit relationships for sure. So trying to bring in, of course, dating women of influence, what it's really about, and really professionals, busy professionals in general, and how is that working out also with the crisis that's going on. So to get started, I think we can start with Suzanne, who is from London, I believe, and you work in a busy sphere as well,
Yes.
for a busy office, and you've experienced some things from your end. So why don't we get started with you?
Great. Thanks, Isabel. And hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I think the COVID situation, I think many people can relate. It's almost like a pressure cooker now that we're all in. We're working from home. Our relationships are at home. Conversations that would typically happen face to face, or that realm of escapism that you would have with your peers or friends or family members, kind of didn't exist. So we're now coming towards, or we're hopefully coming out of this COVID situation where there are now a lot of relationship breakdowns. And my peers could echo the fact that not every relationship has survived this pandemic. There are a lot of elements where there are communication breakdowns, and the fundamentals of freedom and space have been lost in this gap of a relationship where which you would typically have in a normal situation. So for someone like myself, I've always had that freedom and space in a long distance relationship. But I think what made it difficult was the connection, and bringing that regular connection together in a pandemic where actually it creates even longer amounts of distance where you're not seeing each other or having that level of intimacy and communication, which can lead to a relationship breakdown. And also, it calls into question people's mental health as well. How are they coping? How are they communicating? Where is their escape? And these are some of the challenges that have obviously come up through this COVID situation.
Anyone wants to pitch in dating in COVID, and maybe some experiences that you've had or your connections, your friends had?
Well, I can confirm the long distance thing. It's in fact from my own experience, dating has become more difficult. It's like even when you meet somebody through social media or whatever kind of electronic ways, it's like, how do you keep it up? And how do you even get to the point of, I'm going this step further, say, of testing, if you meet somebody new, does that really work? You can have the greatest conversations online, or even on FaceTime or whatever kind of medium. The difficulty starts when you see each other, you smell each other, you touch each other, it might not work out. you simply don't know, and you can't check it. So it kind of, it prolongs the process of selection, so to say. So that's definitely a personal experience.
A personal experience as well, having a long distance relationship, that also finish on the pandemic. Experience that we all were pushed to use online, whether we like it or not, if we wanted to actually meet people. But also it gave us an illusion that we probably create between someone else that we probably thought meeting up in the internet, Zooming, having lunch, creating this bond through some time is very, very different. The illusion that we probably had in the idea that we have, because we have great conversations, we could laugh, we could have the time. And again, it's very easy to connect 1 hour or two every day and talk to someone, that actually sharing someone, when you have that person in front of you, when you actually spend the time, then you realize that it's completely different. It's 100% different from your tone of voice when people actually see you in person, the way you express yourself, the way you schedule your life and everything else. So it's very important. I don't think it's bad or good, but I think it's very important always to if people start relationships online, to actually really move faster into the face-to-face sharing on the real world as well.
I would totally agree. The problem starts when you start dating internationally, and COVID was definitely a blocker here, because people just couldn't travel, and some to a degree still can't, depending on where the people are from. So that can make things really tough, and this is what I mean. It's like a blocker. Can't accelerate the process.
I can relate on this because I was in a 5-year relationship with a girl who was living in Czech Republic. She was from Ukraine, but living in Czech Republic, and I was in France. And actually, yes, it was a long distance relationship for many years. And COVID didn't change anything, because we used to gather each other for every 2 or 3 months. So actually, when we started the relationship, it was the evidence was to stay in touch often together, what we have done through all the different Messenger or WhatsApp applications, which was very good. But after many years, we realized that there is, on one side, for me, it was my girl, it was not possible for her to come and live in France with her, and myself neither, because I was still working as an engineer in Airbus. Now I'm not, but at the time I was. And sometimes, each of us have like some attaches or some blockers, and you try to live in like this, and it's possible to do it for many years, but you really have to take on yourself, because it's long distance, but having the hope that something will happen can make you stay in a long distance relationship. But at the end, it's important that there is a decision to be made to be closer and to live together. But during the COVID situation, I decided to end up for some reasons, personal reasons. And the pandemic, I think, accelerated this decision. But long-term relationship can work, but at the end you need at some point to gather together and to decide to live together.
I completely agree. So I think, being that this streaming is about dating women of influence, I think it's interesting because we talked yesterday, Xavier and I, and you said your girlfriend from the Czech Republic was also an entrepreneur. And I'm trying to bring in now the issue of women entrepreneurs, or women that have careers and that want to hang on to their careers because it's important to them, and they want to build something. And at the same time, they're trying to find a partner to support them. And the partner also has their career typically. So it's the dual career. And then you add to that, of course, the crisis, which didn't help. But then there's this idea of two people trying to build something, and then maybe even because you are an entrepreneur, a coach, someone who likes to keep their mind open, then you're someone who's more likely to meet someone long distance just because you're open and you want to broaden your perspective. So I think that's also a little bit of what's going on with women of influence, is that because you're someone who likes to travel, to go broader, to learn from others, chances are you will attract partners that are also like you. The problem is that with two people that are all worldwiders, interested in traveling, interested in growing, then it's like, when do you find time, or how do you make that really work out, is really the core of this topic. Is how do you at some point say, okay, we're both worldwiders, we have objectives, we want to grow, etc. But if you want to make a relationship work, at some point it's about doing mundane things, about sharing times together. And how is that working with today's modern society, you know? And how do you at some point say, okay, I want to grow, I want to do a master's, I want to travel, but I also need to take care of this person who's investing in me. So how do you make that work out is really...
Yes, and if you want, Isabel, I can share about the story I told you yesterday. In fact, yeah, I was with this woman entrepreneur, and I was also pushing her to make her grow her business. So I was also supporting her, pushing her on reaching her dreams. Okay, because for me it's important that the partner is also expand and feel good and being an inspiration also for me. But what is important also is that the entrepreneur life doesn't collide with the private life. And this, because as you say, I was a coach, like open-minded, I got used to two different way of communicating, like assertive communication and so on. And I was bringing always communication, making understanding what were my needs, and to make her understand also that we needed to have bonding time, and that the entrepreneur life is good, but at some point we need to align and to have some bonding time together. And this was sometimes difficult. And I think in entrepreneur relationship, we need to align on the way forward, how much time also we spend together, and quality time together, not with the phone and answering to clients, you know.
Yeah, Xavier, I think you've made some really important points there, and I think that's essentially the internal coach, the self-coaching element comes in. It's when you start to even do, when you work in management, you do a periodic review, maybe something that is, you want to have some touch points within your relationship to establish, okay, where is this going? Where do I want to be? How am I being a contribution to this, or am I accelerating this to get to that level? But, you know, when you enter into a long distance relationship, it's not with the intention of being a continued long distance. It is with a mindset of there is a unification that's going to happen. There is a coming together and a sharing of both worlds. And it's whether or not each party has the willingness to be able to come together, to be able to make the compromises that's been needed to make in order to have this relationship thrive to the next level. For me, particularly from my own personal perspective and experience, this step was obviously very hard, you know, in terms of being based in the UK, my partner at the time being based in France. And what does that mean in terms of my career development if I cannot be who I am where it is that I want to be? I'm now going to have to make a compromise between what I have built to date in terms of my career, what I've established for myself in terms of my home life, friends, connections, family, all of that, leave that behind to go to a new place, to start from zero, where perhaps from a career perspective might be very detrimental to my personal growth. It's a very difficult decision to make, and it wasn't one that I made lightly. But actually, I had to question myself in terms of, who do I really want to be in this relationship? How do I want to be a contribution? And is my career really important to me in terms of being able to, if I wanted to go from where I am now to, say, a family life, I want to be a working parent. I don't want to be stuck or my world decreased to such a degree where I'm no longer being who I really am intended to be in this world, or who I'm intended to be in the relationship. And it takes a degree of strength to be able to make that decision and awareness of how you are and your way of being. So yeah, completely agree on those points, Xavier. And sometimes tax laws have severe detrimental impact in relationships, and obviously that long distance didn't help. But you know, it's key decisions that we need to make and really question ourselves. I think sometimes we're so stuck in the confines of what's expected to happen. I'm a woman, I'm in my late 30s, you know, should be settled down now. You've got the social pressures on top of it. You know, do I make that switch? What would that mean for me in terms of moving to the next stage? And there are plenty of people that are in the same position where they're having to make that choice, that decision of career versus home life or family. It's a real challenge. Maybe someone else can shed some light on it.
Yeah, let's see if anyone else has found some ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to pick up the thoughts that you had, both of you, Xavier and Suzanne, and take it a step further. What I have noticed in my coaching practice is when I work with high-profile women, Xavier, you said, you know, keep these things apart, you know, the entrepreneurship from the private life, and quite honestly, doesn't work. There is no dividing line, and one has an influence on the other. So we got to look at that as from a holistic perspective, and not just like, this is how I want to be on a private side, this is my business. Particularly people who are actually starting a business, you know, we're in it with our hearts. It's our life, right? So it's not like, oh, 6 o'clock, I put it to the side and have a dividing line. What I find makes an awful lot of sense is, and this builds upon what you both said, is to get clarity on my personal vision. What is important for me in terms of my career, finance, health, whatever. I in total identified 12 areas. There's quite a lot to look into, to the whole life, basically, because it's all connected. And obviously the relationship as well. What is a relationship? What kind of status does it have for me in my life? And Suzanne, you just said, you know, what's expected, you know, societal wise, you know, from family, friends, whatever, you know, whoever. And to get clarity, what is it I want, you know, as a first step. And the second step being in a relationship, because I mean, the first thing is to, you know, when we're talking about high profile women and relationships, the first one is finding one. You know, we're finding somebody who's actually a match. The second one is maintaining one. So if there is one, I suggest what I call a love contract. And what is that? That's something where both partners talk about, what is this relationship for us? Do we share values? What are our values? What kind of expectations do we have towards this relationship? Because, you know, I mean, so many people stumble into relationships, and hey, I'm guilty of that too. Definitely did in the past. Falling in love, everything is so great, and we believe everything will fall into place, or we don't even give it a thought. And the bitter truth is, no, it won't. You know, we got to talk about all these things, you know. And when Suzanne, when you talk about sacrifices, you know, it's like, yeah, is there even an expectation there? You know, how do we structure this? How important is the relationship for both of us? Are we in alignment here or not? Right? Because if you're not, or if we're not in a relationship, eventually it comes out, and eventually it goes pear-shaped. So it might sound a bit like, okay, let's make a business plan for our relationship. This is why I call it a love contract rather than a plan. It's not a plan, it's an alignment exercise. It's helpful though, you know, because rather have it in the beginning and realizing, hey, you know what? I want to get married and have 5 children and want you to be at home. And you say, what? No way, right? I mean, this is a bit extreme. Normally, those kind of things are being discussed. There are other things, though, where there might be just the quiet expectation, and that can go wrong.
I like to listen to podcasts also on from love coaches or people who have experience with those kinds of topics. And I really enjoy hearing the phrase that if men only put so much, or women, if you put so much energy into your relationships as you do in other things. So how many times, and I've been there, where it's like you give 100% to your job, you give 100% to your business partners, to your family, or what have you, and then the partner or the love relationship, it's like after all that, when you've spent all your energy on all these things, it's like now I only have 5% energy, and this is the only thing you're gonna get. And I really believe what she said about if only we gave that much creation energy into our relationships, then people would probably be better off. So you don't have the exhausted girlfriend at the end of the night who's falling asleep at 6 o'clock, or you don't have the person who's always on their phone, which is also something that happened to me, replying, and you're trying to have a conversation. So for me, this is just, again, finding, as you said, Claudia, the love contract maybe is where do you have the boundaries, where at some point it's like, you can't always be giving energies to other things, but also giving energy to the person who's supposed to be important in your life as well, because in the end, it's otherwise you can never build anything interesting. If you're not giving energy into something, it's not going to go anywhere, in my view. But trying to at least put it at the same level, not necessarily more, like I want you to drop everything to follow me in the middle of the desert and have 5 children, which is a little bit extreme, but at least have some balance and in the expectations. Like, okay, maybe this weekend, it's a no phone call, no answering emails, and we just have quality time, maybe on the weekend or something.
I will like to, is my echo there? Can you hear me? Okay. I completely agree with you, Isabel. I think that for women that have a career, or we are entrepreneurs, it's probably a little bit challenging as well, because you've got a lot of things on your plate. You also want to have a lovely, grown, special relationship. First, I think that it's important to have clarity. Not everybody wants that type of relationship. Some people want just to connect sexually with someone and just have a casual relationship. For those of us who want a relationship in a long run, in a monogamous relationship or something more like traditional, I think it's important to have the clarity to also like what you want. That's number one. And number two, have these boundaries established very early in the relationship, where you actually have the communication from early in a relationship. Exactly. Things like, do you want to have children? Are you happy to have a long distance relationship? For how long do you think, if things evolve, what are the next steps? Or, I know it sounds a little bit crazy to talk about these things early, but I think it's important to have those conversations. The sooner the better. Why? Because then you have all those expectations that the person might think, oh, I agree with you. We might be moving next year or 2 years on the line. But actually, a lot of the people I hear, they have the conversations, the more important conversations down the line, really, really later on in their relationship. And then they're like, oh my God, but he doesn't want to have children. Or, oh my God, he's not planning to move to my country. Or, and I think these are things that are fundamental. Like, have the clarity, have the conversations, communication earlier on in the relationship. And when you have that relationship, if you're busy, we're all busy, but you've got to make the time. Esther Perel, which is a relationship coach, very important. She always said that you have to set up time on your agenda to have some time. Although it sounds a little bit like business, I think it's important to create rituals with your partner where you spend time together, dinner together, weekends together, and to bond, to create, to grow as a partnership. Otherwise, no relationship really is gonna flourish if you don't really put the energy, the effort, and the times that really you can share together. So, for example, creating activities that you can do together, like hobbies together, and stick to them. Have those rituals where you put the phone down when you're having dinner. Have those rituals where you are established that on a Saturday, you have that time with your partner, and it's possible. I've seen many successful women that run their businesses with beautiful relationships. So it's not one or the other. I think we all are able to manage our own agendas. And also, if you really want a relationship, you have to put the work on it. If you want a great body, you have to go to the gym and have eaten properly. So again, you want a nice relationship where you flourish with your partner, you got to put the hours, you put the love, and you have to compromise.
So can you do, a big job, work on your body and work on your relationship all at once?
Absolutely. I, for example, I'm a triathlete. I'm an Ironman. I run my own business. I do talks. I do a lot of things, and I have relationships that have last 2, 3, 4 years. They didn't turn to be forever, but they were lovely. And not every relationship is forever, fortunately or unfortunately, And I think what we need to really start understanding is that it's not about the end goal. Is it going to be my husband? Are we going to be here forever? I think the important part is to put everything what you can to that person that you're sharing at that moment, and hopefully you grow together, but sometimes you grow apart together. And that's okay. I think the important part here is you can do everything, but you've got to be organized. You got to be putting your heart. Don't take also everything at once, because you cannot be everything perfect. I think it's a balance, but having a good body, going to the gym, having a relationship, having a business is possible if you organize yourself, and if you also put your heart in everything you do with the same kind of passion and that you do, as much as you put in your work and your well-being, put it as well in the relationship that you're on, that you're sharing.
Anyone wants to add to that?
Yes, I wanted to say that following to what Claudia and Betty said, that actually what I saw when you talked is, in fact, is 1 + 1 equals 3. Because you talked about vision, common vision, and so on. And in fact, we have as individual, each of us, like maybe vision, and it's important to talk about what we will do together, what vision, what value we will align together. And it's important, as you say, Betty, I totally agree that it's very important to align on this very early, not to get surprises in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, Xavier. And I think that the points that Claudia and Betty have made are really good examples around setting the plan, setting it. But also, I think when you, with all good intentions, there are sometimes shifts, because you're growing in that relationship as well. You're growing in yourself, but you're growing in comparison or congruent to the other person. And sometimes your vision changes for yourself, and therefore that may not align with your partner who's somewhere else. Okay, so probably your partner's thinking everything's great and hunky-dory, but actually now you're having these internal challenges because you're growing in terms of what your expectations are for yourself, what you want for yourself. And for me, I think, or for many women, when they enter into marriage, when they're forced to make this choice of between career and home life, is that it calls into question influence or power or influence or say within a relationship. For me personally, retaining a career and retaining my independence, financial independence, is really critical in the way that I want to be in a relationship and how I can be a contribution to that relationship. It also means, for me personally, and I don't know if that means for other women as well, is that, do I have an influence over what happens? Because I'm a financial contributor, or am I dependent also, or am I willing to give up my dependency or independency for a dependent relationship in terms of finances? And does that influence the amount of power or influence that I have in that dynamic? Am I just going to be sat and be told what to do and where the money should be spent, or am I going to be an equal contribution? And I think that is a really key question that you need to ask yourself when you make that decision to end your career, what is the consequence? What is the impact? Or what is the risk of that outcome? Because for me, that was a big risk, is that I would lose freedom and choice and security for myself.
And this, Susanne, is why I'd like to clarify here. When I talk about vision, I'm not talking about a plan, because these are two very different things. A vision is really on a much higher level. It's not, we're going to live here, we're going to do this, we're going to have this ritual. It's more the principles, it's the value, well, you could say a higher or deeper level, depending on how you want to look at it. It creates the basis. So that means if there is such a vision or love contract between two people, then it kind of talks about, for example, we're both equal in this relationship in all aspects. Then you've got it sorted, right? Then you know exactly, even when you decide together that, you as a woman, for example, take care of the family life, or the man, it could be the other way around. When I was married and had children, my then husband stayed at home and I was working. So, it could also be the other way around. So I was the breadwinner, and, we had this agreement, of course, you can access the money anytime, right? So this is the alignment that I talk about. The consequence, then you can have access to my bank account, or, it's our bank account, not mine, is a result of we're equal partners. Does that make sense? So it's really the alignment, and I mean, I get this dependency situation. In my last relationship, I pivoted in my career path. So that meant I stopped one and I started something new, and I really cut the one off. That meant income-wise, I started at basically nothing. And yeah, that was also an agreement. I'll tell you what, it created the most horrible feelings inside of me, because I was raised to be independent, and particularly financially independent. And I realized this was simply a mindset. This was simply a habit. It wasn't like I couldn't change, because we can all change. We can shift our attitudes. It just felt like this. You said the freedom. It's like, oh my God. Despite my partner was very generous and he paid for everything, and still it felt strange. So the one thing is, what kind of agreements do we have? The other is the emotional side, which can be really tricky. And Betty, I would like to add something to what you said. Isabel, you asked, so can we have everything? Can we work on everything? And yeah, to a degree, yes. The moment when you say, oh, I can do this, we can organize everything, immediately this picture sprung up, like, as it seems like there's still the expectation, maybe from ourselves or from society, as a woman, when we have a career and a family, that we're perfect, that we're organize everything and get everything. We look great, we're fit, we're healthy, we're successful, we're great partners, great moms, the house looks sparkling, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is so exhausting. I can't do that. Sorry. So I've learned to become very honest with that and said, you know what? I can't do everything. There are parts, in my house that are definitely not sparkling clean. My windows look awful because I just didn't find the time to do them. When I was a mom, my children are grown up now. There were times when, I didn't cook the totally fresh meal, or I was so tired that I fell asleep on the sofa before my children, right? So I guess, no, my wish would be that we as women don't put this expectation on ourselves to be great and perfect in everything. And,
I agree with you, Claudia. What you say is perfect to a certain extent. And I think when we think that is too much, it's totally okay to take less things in our plate. like everybody. But I want to also touch a point that I think is important that Susan kind of make financially. I think that successful career women, we are very much concerned of like being equal, being equal. And one of the things I experience also is that most of my successful friends are single, because also I think, unfortunately, many of these successful women are also very much using their like masculine energy sometimes, not letting the man treating a woman, not treating the woman also. I mean, I'm not discouraging saying I want to be in a 50-50, but I also put a mark here sometimes. Sometimes the partner that we're sharing with, it earns, I mean, I have been with people that earn a lot more money than me. I cannot really say, hey, I'm going to put the 50% on here also, because I don't think it's fair for me, because I don't earn that. Also, sometimes when you are dating a very wealthy person, you cannot really afford to pay this 50-50. And I think the last year especially, I start really realizing a lot more that it's very important as well as women, that we are successful, that yes, we can be leaders at work. That's amazing, wonderful. However, in a relationship, a man also wants to see the feminine in us, want to take care of us, want to sometimes treat us for something. And we also need to work on allowing this energy, because we also want the man that protects us, but also I want to protect him. So what are we trying to attract? We need to really start understanding, do we want to attract the guy who's going to be our son, we need to pay for everything and be like, okay, well, I tell you what to do, or we want to attract a man who wants to protect us? So what energy are also we working on? One thing is being successful and using that masculine energy to lead projects, to be leaders. But in our relationship, what are we going to do? Because the same energy is not going to work so well for the man, protective man, lovely, gentle, that we are sometimes want to attract. So I want to know your points of view, Xavier, on this, because you are the man here. What do you think?
Yes, it's perfect that you talk about feminine and masculine energy, because that's what I feel sometimes when a woman want too much take control of things. For me, it's like really feeling this masculine energy, and myself, I have high feminine energy, so I really feel this, and as a man, for me, it's like pushing me back, feeling too much this energy. But it's important to find a good balance, and also to understand why I have this behavior with so much high masculine energy. Do I want to prove something? Do I want? Is it okay for me? Is it aligned with who I am internally, like the true self, or is it something that I bring to maybe protect myself or something, or to prove something to someone of my family unconsciously? So it's important to find a good balance as men and women, because also men have could also have some too much masculine energy, and should have also a good balance with feminine energy, and the other way around. Like for me, I have a feminine energy, and sometimes I need to have more masculine energy. So finding the good balance be in the couple is really important, and also letting the other person express the true energy they have, because I was with a girl that wanted masculine energy, but I cannot fake it being like too masculine, myself, like I have more feminine, so I can like put a little more masculine energy, but at the end I'm like myself, I like, in like I would say maybe 70% of the time, or 80 maybe, I like feminine energy, like feeling and emotions and so on. That's why I also do my coaching on emotions, you know. So finding the good balance, it's really important, and not forcing the other to bring the energy that you expecting, I would say.
We have some questions from the chat. So Mac Ramos, I can participate right now. And I think it's perfect continuation of what we're saying, because I hear a lot of, you know, this is how also we're built in society, like with the masculine should do this, the feminine should do that. So Mac is saying, are we not in a sort of slave to a self-created system? System expects something from us. Again, the masculine, feminine, like what the man should do or the woman should do. Are we ready and able to satisfy those expectations, or do we find a sort of compromise? And that's what I had in my notes as well, in the show notes. Or do we find a sort of compromise with that system to reach individually or in conjointly with our objective, which are really the results?
And maybe I wanted to add one more point we discussed yesterday, Isabelle, and to answer also to this question is, I was drawn in a family where my mom was doing the kitchen, you know, cooking and so on. But now in my situation, I do this. When I was with my girl, most of the time I was doing it. I was taking care of this because I love it. For me, it's bring very much joy to prepare, to make things and so on. And I think more and more there are men that are taking care of the stuff that in the past women were taking care of. So I think it's evolving, and it's just good change are happening, I would say. And after, it's also the job to the mom, also when they grow their kids, to teach them to do these kind of things, you know, because I had some friends, the mom used to say, you don't have to be in the kitchen. Yeah, but if you are not in the kitchen, you will never learn how to do cooking, you know. I was always behind my mom looking what she was doing. She was not teaching, but I was learning, you know. And we need to make evolve the relationship and the roles in homes.
Yeah, and we talked about authenticity a little bit earlier when I did another podcast. And, you know, what is wrong if you're a woman and maybe you enjoy cars and you enjoy sports and all those things, and maybe you're a man and you enjoy, you know, things that are mostly feminine, like, as you say, maybe cooking and all these things. But what's the issue? I mean, if you're happy with it, you know, why not? So I think, again, now the idea is that men should do, there's this, again, like men should do these things and women should do these things. And we're cast in that, in a way, that we have what's expected of us and what we should be doing. And then we're not ourselves because we're trying so hard to conform to that. And to some extent, we may end up with partners that are not right for us because we're not authentic. We're trying to be someone. And in the end, you can't just hold this full self almost during the relationship. So I think in the end, it's all about, I really believe, again, in being ourselves. And, you know, someone should look at it as, you know, if we're ourselves, then we can attract better, I think, better matches as well.
I think that's a really good point. And it's really interesting that you touched on both the masculine and the feminine energy. And I think depending on the roles that we have at work, sometimes that transcends into the home life, and it's like managing people, do this, that this, control, you know, all of that kind of thing. And you're trying to do that in the home life. I think the challenge is, of course, is that when we want to enter, as women, we want to enter into that feminine state, are we partnered with the people who are naturally going to then balance that or counteract that with the masculine state? Because people who are, or women who are really kind of hard hitting, you know, they really are fired up about their role, and obviously depending on their position, they're, you know, really hard at it in their masculine energy. It's a lot of fight, it's a lot of pushing, it's a lot of, you know, getting out there. I can only physically do it like the masculine kind of movements. But then you kind of want to have that element of taking care of. But there is that not everyone has it. Oh, well, you're working, independent woman. You don't need to be provided for. I don't need to pay for your meal. You can pay for it. Just that is that kind of attitude or counter argument. It's like, oh, well, you're working now, so you can pay. And it's like, well, no, hang on a minute. When's the opportunity for me to show like me be in the state that I actually want to feel like I'm in when I'm with my partner? You know, yes, I'm working, but what does that mean in sense of, yes, I want to be able to go on nice holidays and be a contribution to breaks away and meals out, but sometimes it's nice to be treated as well. But when you're put that in your face of, you can get this one, or it's kind of, you know, forced, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, like, you know, we're dating, we're courting. It's where's your investment in me as well as my investment in us? You know, where does that leave us? And this is the minefield of the dating game now. Where there are some questionable experiences, which obviously haven't, you know, it's the common question, like, who pays on the first date? You know, do I feel like I'm in my best feminine energy when I'm with this person? Or, you know, obviously you kind of, I think the biggest question that we have with established women, and I'm moving on, is how do we find the person that is of equal or higher? Because if we go to dip too low in terms of income, career path, and so on, we are making heavier sacrifices, because then we have that expectation to like fill the gap when there is this masculine feminine energy, when there is this gap. So you're almost where the challenges are being faced with single women in their 30s who've got their own home, their careers, their cars, you know, where does the gap leave us? Are we going to find someone that has their own home, their car, or career, and so on? Are they going to be on the same level playing field, or are we having to drop our standards in order to get the partner or relationship? It's a real question of balance that is being challenged at the moment. I think
it's amazing what you just say, but I also kind of really, for the people that listen to us and for us as well, I think it's important to start thinking a lot more about the values and the things that are really the core important of our relationship over, I know it sounds crazy, but over the house or the car or the career titles. Why? Because ultimately you can date guys that can be your equal financially or having more financially. However, they might not have the time to invest on you or your relationship. I think the most important factor when you're building these relationships as a successful woman is not to look, okay, is he tall? Is he has a house and the car, and he can pay for my meals and my holidays? I think it's very important to assess, of course, that person has a job that is successful in terms of, I mean, having his stuff together, you know, his work, his income. But sometimes you will see and be surprised that a lot of very successful women go to guys are not as successful as them. However, they look after them, they share the same values, and they're kind of build a family. So I think the important part, I don't think necessarily has to go through like career and equal and more than me, but more like how this person makes me feel. Is this person is aligned with me, is in the same wavelength than me? Can we build on this relationship together? Obviously having our two works, I mean, you can have a decent job, that person can have a decent job, and the two incomes, you will travel and eat in restaurants, you know? I think the important part is, in the long run, do this person have the time to invest in me? Does this person care about me? You know, and the values, you know, is this person honest? Is it faithful? Is it, these are the things that we need to look more, because I think we're focusing too much in, is it 1.80 meters? Is he blue eye? Is he, and now we're compromising on the values, but we're not compromising on the important things. And my encouragement in this conversation is, please, ladies and people that is looking for real connections, we need to start focusing more in what the values that we share in that kind of conversations that we need to have with the other person, deep conversations, deep connections over everything else. And obviously look at the others, but number one is that.
I couldn't agree.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really with what's going on right now with the crisis, I would argue that it's all upside down. I mean, you could be someone on top of your game and Corona crisis hit, and I've talked to so many people who lost businesses, lost jobs. So in the end, the whole thing about having your ducks in a row in terms of where you stand financially with the job, and those are things that can change very fast. So the whole idea of, well, the man should be this and he should have this kind of job and it should work like this, it's not reality. Reality is that sometimes people go through different situations. And in the end, as you say, Betty, and I really agree with that, it's all about the values. You know, if you have the same values, you can make it through. And that's how our grandparents and parents built their relationship, is that they had some highs and they had some really low times. I've seen that with my parents, who've been married 50 years, by the way. So they had some great times, and then they had times where, you know, there were a lot of crises going on, external or internal to their couple. But they made it through thick and thin, because it wasn't about the job title or who brings what. It was about, you know, the family and the values. And I think probably in some countries, you know, a little bit, I would think maybe Catholic countries that are a little bit more in that mindset of, you know, building the family together and all that. Whereas in some countries, it's a little bit going more on the selfish end. Now it's like, I have my thing and you have your thing, and you're almost like partnerships, you know, like two companies, and you're not really looking at it as, what are we trying to build together? As our parents and grandparents, you know, build families together, business, what have you. They were looking at it as one entity, really.
Well, Isabel, I think that's a great concept, but you can see how relationships break down very quickly. And also that means the impact of assets and contributions that people have built individually. So there is an element of that you need to take into consideration. It's all very well and good entering into a marriage, but once you do that, that means all your assets that you've worked for are then combined. And therefore, when that marriage descends, then there is that separation or something that actually that other party hasn't been a contribution to. Why should they get access to that? So, of course, what I'm trying to explain is that we've worked hard to get to where we are today. We've built our lives, we've built our careers. Why are we going to settle for someone, or the potential of settling for someone who hasn't got that? And then maybe 5-10 years from now, I mean, let's be realistic about divorces. They end in separation, say, oh yeah, no, but I was contributing towards the bills and, you know, all of that. And so then I'm entitled to your house. I'm entitled to 50%.
I can completely understand that. And I think also the difference that I've seen with, again, the older generation is that when they entered marriage, they didn't think about breakup or divorce. It was a different time and era where you met someone, and it was really, people really had what I would call the faith that you meet someone, it's for a lifetime. There was no, oh, is he going to let me down, or are we going to get divorced? It wasn't even in the radar. Whereas now the first thing we think as more modern relationship is can I trust this person? You know, can I build something with this person? Is he going to scam me? You know, I mean, it's really sad. But I think it's really the day and era. You know, when my parents met, my dad can't see. So when they met, you know, obviously that was already the thing, like how we're going to build a life together and if we want children and everything. But I think both my parents had the faith that they would make it work. And they believed in their project together. And they did really well all the 50 years together, because they didn't let each other down, never. So I think that's really the faith that when you, and in that day and age where you met someone, you had the faith and you didn't let the other person. So I think now people are more into it like, well, you know, it's not as great anymore. And now I want something else, or we're distracted. So there's not that all in and building something for a lifetime. It's a different age. I think now people look at it more as, well, am I still getting what I want in this pact or what have you? So it's a different way of thinking, I think, the modern era.
I guess it's also a question of why do I go into a relationship? You know, is it, you know, a lot of relationships that I see are very transactional. You know, I give you that, you give me that. I bring that, you bring that, right? So whereas there are necessities of dealing with that kind of situation. So Suzanne, I completely get where you're coming from. As I said before, I was the breadwinner in our marriage. So I don't know, I probably paid for this house twice because I paid something to my husband, you know, and I paid him maintenance despite the fact he wasn't working for a long time. So yeah, I know the feeling of, you know, it's like, I've worked all the time, you know. Yes, he was looking after the kids for a few years. So I get this feeling scenario. So on the other side, you know, meanwhile, years later, I'm asking myself, when I go into a relationship, what is it? What's the reason here? You know, is this to build a working business, more or less? Family equals a business. Or do I go into this relationship, and I'm using a big word here, with unconditional love? And as a matter of fact, I believe the majority of love that we show, it doesn't matter whom, parents, children, partner, nowadays is conditional. And I believe that's a big, big hurdle. And, you know, how do we get to this unconditional love? Completely different conversation. And quite complicated, probably. I'd like to get to what Betty said about the checklist. I call it the checklist, you know, and quite honestly, years ago, I did the same thing. And to a degree, yes, I do have certain expectations towards the person I let into my life as well, right? So the checklist has changed, though. You know, the income, yeah, that's a nice thing. Let's say it this way. I told myself, hey, it's absolutely, I can also fall in love with a rich guy in the same way as I can with a poor guy, right? You know, so I can choose more or less, because we don't fall in love per se. You know, we are kind of looking or picking the people to a degree. Do I look at somebody who says, oh, I really like this person, but I'm, you know, let me have a look at the paycheck. Is that enough? Don't know. I was never in that situation, so I don't know if it plays a role. Let's say it this way. I'm not denying that it plays a role.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at a relationship holistically in the world of life. Yeah, right.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
It is. You know, I'd love to say money doesn't matter, but essentially, if you want to go away, it does.
Yeah.
Security, safety, freedom, fundamental life importance does play a part in that. And to some degree, is what friends have experienced. And I'm not just talking myself here, because I've been very fortunate enough to meet really decent people, but there is resentment that's built up, could be built up by a partner who's not able to be an equal contribution or match up to the lifestyle that someone of a higher income could potentially lead. And that poses the problem. That is the fundamental issue, is that when a woman is higher performing, they're not in a marriage, dating, or in a long-term relationship, cohabiting, that when there is that kind of disproportionate level of income, how is the other person going to be able to sustain that? Because the person who's like got their bonus and wants to take them away, but then the other person can never take them away anywhere on their bonus or whatever, it's always the other person then paying out for that person to be together, that does have a burden to carry. And as much as we want to look at the values, and Betty, I completely appreciate those values are really key, it is the day-to-day practice. It is, what does this look like in reality? What does this look like in practice?
I will add to this something, Suzanne. I'm completely with you, because I have been with people that I've earned a lot more money and I end up actually being a lot of the provider. Now, what I would like to add in this conversation is this. As women as well, with that feminine energy that we're trying to talk about, also, we're attracting people as well into our lives. We attracting that kind of man that probably sometimes, we know from day one, It's not really generous sometimes, or it's just like, oh, you put a 50, you pay these. So my work has been, Suzanne, also, who is the man I want to attract? And again, what Claudia says, what type of relationship, what things do I need in this relationship? I personally need a generous man. Why? Not because I don't have. I'm successful. I have my money. I can do it. But because I like generosity in general, not just financially, in everything, completely. Generous in time, generous in love, generous in finance as well. I don't want to be always like, this is the 50, this is the 50. So I think what everybody is individual, and there are women that are looking for financial stability with a man. There are women that look for a sex lover, Latin lover. I don't know. Some others are looking for a partner. So that's important, and also inviting all the women who are the man we are attracting, because we are attracting sometimes the same kind of man because we need to work on something. And maybe the work that you and I, Suzanne, we needed to do sometimes is that while we're attracting this person, that we sometimes have to be a lot more careful about our finances, So that's kind of the invitation I want to do, because I have been in those shoes and I'm working on it. And I'm attracting as well a different type of persons because I am working on that. So it's very important to do not the work from the other, but what can we do to change the person that we attracting?
That's not who I'm attracting, by the way. Just to put it out there. But it's a discussion, and it's a fear-led discussion based on what is occurring in reality. So it's not a personal experience, but it's having that awareness of what is out there. And I'm a firm believer of the law of attraction, and what you put out, you receive, and the energy that you're putting out there, you are more likely to receive. So completely, Betty, agree with you. But unfortunately, the world is very grotty. And it has some deep minds. So with all good intentions, even if you put it out there, what you get in return sometimes is completely the opposite, and it doesn't come up right away. It comes out later down the line in the kind of microaggressions, or perhaps the little nuances or the indifferences that could result in a demise of a relationship. And that doesn't happen in your dating stages. That happens somewhat later on down the line.
So I think, Susan, you're bringing a topic that I think we said we would raise, is the red flags. So red flags being, for people who haven't heard this term before, it's really the things that you see at the beginning when you connect with someone. It could be things they say, things they do, like what are some of the signals that we should be aware of, whether this is going to be a great person or someone that may not have the greatest of intention. So if you want to share maybe some experience or maybe warnings that you've seen that you say, I should have seen this before, never again type of thing, the floor is yours.
Well, I'd love to go first. I mean, Betty, you can give some examples.
I have many to share, but go first.
I think the first is obviously, once you identify how much work you're even making on the first date, how much effort you're making on the first date, I think it's a really big key. If you're the one trying to organize the time, you're proactively, as in the woman is proactively organizing the time, searching the venue, searching, the cost comparison. Where shall we meet up? Is this location okay for you? Like, you're like constantly in that mode. It's a key sign that actually, is he going to be proactive in that relationship? Is he actually going to be the guy that takes the lead so you can have the space to be in that feminine energy? And then also it's like, yes, we want to be an equal contribution, but my one big flag is if he pulls out a voucher on the first date and then decides, oh, I've got a voucher code. It's just like, oh, thanks. Give you, oh, now we can go 50-50. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, sure. Which just explains even more that they're soon going to start looking into the numbers and the pettiness of of the finances, and there's nothing more off-putting for me than someone who's cheap, because you know you want to be generous in a relationship, as generous as potentially the partner that you're with, so you are contributing to everyone's enjoyment, not just your own. So I don't know, Betty, it just
I have two very clear ones that happen, and I heard this very often, and honestly I hope that the people who's listening to this episode will definitely take notes. I think a very important red flag is people who doesn't walk the talk, meaning that if somebody earlier on in a relationship starts showing you that they're not really are accountable for the things they say, please pay attention to it. So if somebody says to you, tomorrow I'll call you, they don't call, I'll text you, they don't text, I'll invite you, they don't invite you, then it's very clear that you really need to start looking to those. And one that I find it super important, very important red flag is a lot of people on the online dating are not putting their true profiles, meaning some people in single dating apps are actually married. And so ladies and gentlemen, please, first things first, I think it's very important to start questioning things less. I mean, we're all entering more like flirty, how's your day, and chit chat conversation. That is all cool. However, I think it's very important earlier on in a relation, in anything that you start developing, to ask the questions on how many children do you have? How long have you been single? That's another question that is very important that people don't ask, because we have the fear that, oh my God, this is too early to ask. But I think it's very important to start asking, are you married? Are you married? Because there is people online that are married and on single apps. So, I mean, my invitation in this conversation is like, please, let's don't be afraid to be ourselves, number one, to show our true self. And what we like, what we don't like, we're going to start attracting, as Isabel said, the right crowd. Even if it's a smaller, doesn't matter, it's the right one. And second, let's have a better communication earlier on to avoid all this time invest on the wrong relationships.
Yeah, I would add to that, you know, if there is a chance to meet up in person, you know, Suzanne was talking about dates. I find it incredibly telling how a date or the man treats a waiter, you know, other people around them. You know, are they really friendly? Are they nice? Are they kind? I mean, one of the sentences I've heard some time ago, and it's so true. If people show you who they are, you better believe them. As they show their true colors normally. It's just on us to look at it and to look at it. And that's what I've started doing. If it was a friend, how would I judge this behavior, or how would I view this behavior they're showing, what they're saying, what they're doing? Because often if it's a love interest and we're, you know, have the butterflies, or we like them, or, you know, there was a good start, we tend to kind of ignore it. And if we put ourselves in the friend area, say, hey, if a friend did that to me, how would I like that? And if the answer is not, I wouldn't like that, you know, you wouldn't like it as a love interest either.
I didn't mean to that. I'm sorry I haven't let Xavier talk, but taking the time to get to know people. I think we all enter in a relationship before we know the person, and actually having those times where you actually get to know someone in the real, not maybe friends zone, but I think getting to know them in an environment with friends, in an environment when they're actually having a couple of drinks, in an environment where they're working, is stressful, because it's very easy to show your best parts at the beginning of any relationship. But I think the important part here is that when you're in your worst, can we handle each other? When we are in our worst situations, can we make this work? Because it's very lovely when you are pretty in a successful moment in your career. But I think it's important to take those, I mean, I'm not saying a time frame, it has to be 2 months, it has to be 3, but actually taking, when you really want a relationship, taking the time to get to know that person in a lot of different levels, ask the questions, meet their friends, what you just say, Claudia, see how they behave with others, because it's a lot different what people tell you than what people do. So see a lot more the the actions rather than what they say, what is looking the checklist. But actually, it's very great that somebody has a great job, but if they're not generous, what is going to add into you? It doesn't matter. So yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like, it's easy. That's what I think. Sometimes it's easy to go out to the movies or have dinner and you both have a job, everything's going perfect, and and it's just all the good times. But then that's not life. In life you will be faced with difficulties, and that's when you want to see the person colors. They can resist, time, and things not maybe going so well, and can they still be there? It's as you say, maybe building a solid connection first before you get too blinded because you like the person, so vetting, I think, the person to see really what they're about when the call gets tough, and you really need to see, what kind of person, what do they have inside, what kind of person they are when things don't go so well, and when you need a shoulder, or you need someone who's going to be resilient. And again, I've seen this with my family, with the highs and the lows, and that's part of every relationship, I think. But now again, I think people are really hooked up on the highs. It's like everything should be pretty and like Instagram, cute couples, and they all have Ferraris, and dining in chic places. That's not life. It could be at some point, maybe when you're young and healthy and everything's going well, but you will have at some point, life will come to teach you some lessons, and you may lose your job, you may lose the Ferrari, and not dine in the 5-star hotel. So what do you do then? Do you leave the person? So I think again, people now it's like they're on drugs, on having always the pink lifestyle, and not really being able to deal well with difficulties, and the coping skills. And we've seen also we talked earlier about the crisis, how all of a sudden people are at home and they don't see people in person. And it's like, how are you coping with this? Are you able to adapt and to always be a good friend for people who need you, even though you're not going to the cool places anymore because you can't? But that person is still in your life. Are you calling them? Are you asking how they're doing? Are you there for them? So it's really, I think, in the tough times. Personally, I like going through tough times with people around me, because that's when I see their true colors. Where everything is going well, it's like it's all bubbly and fantastic, but when it gets really hard, that's when you can see, who is going to be willing to go through it with you.
Well, absolutely, Isabel. I think just to extend on that, I think it's a communication, a relationship. I think it's an ongoing communication where you're both actively sharing, actively listening, and being a contribution to one another. And I think this is when the communication starts to break down, the sharing starts to break down, then that's when, things really hit the fan. Because when you start sharing, you start breaking off into isolation, and that's when things start to break down. And what I find is really important, actually, and it is certain signs that you can pick up on, is, are they asking you about you? Do they have general interest in you and your well-being and where you want to be and your goals? And that's where and it's active listening. It's the constant inquiry. It's the inquiry and the curiosity in the other person. And if you lose that, then you lose your relationship. And it's really interesting. You can see that on a first date as well, is how interested are they in you? Have they asked you once about, so what have you been doing? And I'm doing this. What do you do in your spare time? And other things that don't evolve around your job. It's like, who are you as a full person? And really getting to understand that. And I think that is something that is really can be missed on dates, and paying attention to that, because if they're not and they're in it, what they're doing is they're projecting their self and the ego, but they're not actually trying to understand you. And I think that's a real telltale sign around where this relationship is going to go, I think, or where the dating is going to go.
I love what you say, Suzanne. Also, Betty mentioned this, but showing the true self is also removing the social mask to also attract people that are a mirror of yourself, and also pushing back the person that doesn't like who you really are. Because when we put mask, when we have social mask, we will attract someone that doesn't really fit with who we are. And that's what I do. Like I love deep conversation. So as soon as I meet up a girl, and even a person, actually, it's not only about girls. I go deep in deep conversations, and because I love this, and because it's me, like talking about like gossiping or this doesn't interest me at all. So I'm trying as much as being myself, because we are also sometimes trying to protect some part of ourselves. But I see that this, since I am doing this, I'm more attracting people that really deep connected with who I am internally, and also working on our emotional wounds, because we also and we can see in our life, if we have recurring patterns that attract, like if you're attracting some kind of men since long time, it may be mean, or maybe even women, it's for every one of us, is maybe there is emotional charge in yourself that also will attract this kind of people. And working on yourself, on your emotions, and removing also some things will also be able to free yourself for some things that will attract these people. And I have seen this in my life. Before, I was attracting sometimes some people that were toxic for myself, either men or women. And more I have worked on myself, or my inner beliefs or emotions, or things and internal, really helped me to attract as friends or lovers more and more people deeply connected with who I am.
I totally get that, Xavier. This is pattern and beliefs. It's probably the biggest topic I'm working on with myself and the clients on a regular basis. And the third one I find is the conditioning. And one of the things that I believe almost all of us grow up with, also with, whatever kind of these kind of love stories, and we have all these super romantic idea about the one, about the relationship. Betty said before, hey, the relationships can have just their certain time, and I've learned eventually nothing's permanent, really nothing. In a way, it could be with the death of the person at the end of life, like in Isabel with your parents, they will probably stay together. I've been married for 60 years, not that they're happy, but they stay together because that's what you do in this generation. So, we're acting differently. However, my point here is that often I personally have learned and believed that we put too much expectations in a relationship. It's like, it must be the one, it must be my soulmate, it must be my best friend, it must be the greatest lover, it must be my protector, it must be my provider, it must be, I don't know what, everything, right? And quite honestly, if anybody expects that from me, it's like, oh my God, I got to run, because that's just too much. And I guess for me, I took the consequence to say, you know what? I'm going to modify that for me. I am going to make this lighter, because no person in the world can be this wonderful. I can't, so I can't expect it from anybody else. And this is what we've been conditioned on, and I believe it's about time to move on from this expectation.
Yeah, and that's the Disney movies that we all love to watch, right? The Prince Charming, that's going to be this one and only, the one. And then aren't we looking for that person our whole lives, where, at the beginning we wish it's the one, and then suddenly you see all the red flags we talked about earlier, and like, dang, it's not the one. So is that reality, or is it just maybe, you know, you just have to work with what you have and it's never going to be perfect? So
yeah, I think where are we choosing from? I think that a lot of people choose their partner because they feel lonely, because they're desperate sometimes, because they need a father for their children, because they need a provider to pay all the bills. I don't know. I mean, I think the important also question is, where are we choosing our partners? And what you just say, Isabel, is beautiful. I mean, I come from a family that also parents are still together, traditional Catholic Latin American family. And those models of women being the woman, men being the provider, women being like, oh, just pay me everything. And I hated that. And when I moved to England to live, completely changed. And I became all this superwoman that ultimately also was on my own damage, thinking, oh my God, I want to lead also the relationship. I also want to do this. And I had a very long journey learning about my love life, my relationships, who I'm attracting, why am I attracting, the wounds that Xavier talked, how can I heal those? But coming to your point, Isabel, I think there is no right question or like right or wrong question. I think when you are comfortable, when you are really happy with a relationship, the questions the big points, the big points are going to be smaller. I think we all have things that are really important to us in terms of values, in terms of long-term relationships. And I think that you can do a lot with having those completely not compromised, the ones that are really, really important. But the ones that maybe are not the perfect ones you can compromise, we all have to do it anyways, you know, at the end of the day, we all have to. But one of the things I read the other day is that when it's too complicated, it's not really the right thing. You know, I think relationships, we've been told that they're being hard work and you have to work really hard. But I think it's also about being comfortable, working obviously through difficulties, but also not killing yourself to maintain a relationship that is completely like not the right one for you. So coming back to your point, I think there is, I believe it because I've seen it in real life as your parent. I've seen many cases. I haven't had the love of my life yet, apart from myself. But I do believe that there is people who you can work with if things are smooth, if things flow, if they're giving you and you're giving them what they need and they're giving you what you really need deep in your core. But you cannot settle for things that are really not making you enough happy, you know, to add into your life. Everybody that comes has to come to add value into your life, to add happiness, to add companionship. If they, in fact, of leveling you up and lifting you up, they're dragging you down, clearly it's not the right one. But I think you can do a lot with someone that is not perfect. I've done a lot in relationships that haven't been perfect, and me either. But we maintain it, you know, and it was good until it stopped being good. But I think there is a lot of cases where you can see a lot of couples that have make it work because their things flow and they want it and they work together.
anyone wants to add to that?
Well, I don't believe in the perfect person. Everybody has flaws, you know, and everybody has things that we might just decide to ignore. Gee, you know, it's I don't believe in flawless. We're all human, and I believe, no, I've seen it. The older we get, the more, if we're lucky, the more true to ourselves we get, and the more centered we get. And you know what? There might not be 100% congruence with the other person, and I don't believe it's necessary. Again, I repeat this. I believe we got to ask ourselves the question. And Betty, you mentioned a few reasons. Why do we enter into a relationship? Is that because I would like to have a companion, or because I just want to love and to be loved, right? As easy as that. Or are the circumstances different? And quite honestly, I don't believe there's a right or wrong for any relationship in this world. It's a very, very individual matter. and it's just about finding this alignment with a person at a time, or maybe even more, right? I mean, there is a wonderful lady, author, I don't know if you have heard of her, she's called Dr. Shefali, and she wrote a book, A Radical Awakening. She talks a lot about the conditioning of women in particular, and she questions basically everything. She questions love, she questions sexuality, she questions marriage, like the way how we live, the monogamous lifestyle, etc. This is culture. This is how we grew up, and she just encourages people, and I support that, just to ask ourselves, what is my lifestyle? What is right for me and for the people I am with? Maybe somebody likes a polyamorous lifestyle. Others say, no, don't share, right? I mean, and I believe it's about time that we take a step back from this societal expectations that are like encrusted over our true selves, and find our own style in life, in relationships, in everything, basically.
Nice words there. And by the way, it's great that you raised polyamory, because it's really cultural. I find that it's almost a trend now that people are testing that. And of course, if you're not completely engaged with it, going back to, I think it was Betty that was saying, you really want to ask the questions before, because a lot of people are heavily practicing the polyamory, and you may end up very disappointed if you realize you're not the only one there in that relationship. So, again, if for some people it's normal, it's what they do, and but again, it might not be for everybody. So because there's all these different types of relationships now, so again, polyamory, a lot of people that are married and want to have their fun on the side, casually. I mean, all these things are there. So you want to just check on that, make sure it fits what you want or not. Because it's not as simple. I think the culture that we have now is not as simple as what I was saying, our parents or grandparents, where it was a little bit more, like, I think rules or, relationships were a little bit more the same in a way. You married someone, it was for lifetime, you went through it thick and thin, and that's what was expected, and no one questioned it. And also there was maybe a bit of a religious aspect to it as well. But I think now relationships, it's like startups, everything is to be created. Everyone creates their own type of relationships. And it can be very, for some people, it's like, wow, it's exciting. But for some people, it could also be like, I'm lost in that. And some people even check out completely. I know I have friends who just check out completely because they're like, I'm lost in this. I don't understand it. It's not for me. I just check out because it's just too much. So it is a complex world. And you need to navigate through it. Just asking questions, I think, as you were saying earlier, making sure you're in the same wavelength, because there's just many, many different kinds of expectations now, I think.
Claudia said something super important. Everybody's happy. I mean, everybody's free to do whatever they're happy with. The ones who weren't polyamorous, monogamous, whatever. But I think what is very important also, Isabel, is being like congruent with your values on who you are. Not because you are with this relationship, you've got to change your values. And if it's something that is really not for you, then it's not for you. And be very honest and authentic, because again, we're gonna be what Xavier and we've been talking. The more we authentic are, if we're not agree with these things, then it's completely fine. That partner is not the right one. So questions, and everybody's free to do so, but be very connected for your values and what you really makes your core belief, and don't really change for a relationship, because then ultimately you're gonna end up being super miserable.
I believe, Betty, you're absolutely right, Betty. I believe that's the core anyway. I mean, Isabel mentioned it. We're living in a completely different world now, and Corona has sped up certain developments in our society and on the world. And it's become more uncertain, more unpredictable, and this will maintain this way. And it touches all areas, not just business or economy. It touches every single life. And I think, Susanne, you mentioned that in the beginning. It's about our mental health, is being affected as well. And for me personally, the only solution here is to become the most centered person and aligned with self. That's the starting point, before I even go into a relationship, to really get to my own core and have the stability, the security, the connection with myself. Because if I start looking for those factors in the outside world, I might be lost. And or a relationship will go pear-shaped rather quickly. And so that's the navigator, I believe, in for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Claudia. I think when you in your gut you feel like something is not quite right, it's not quite right because you're checking in. It's checking in with yourself, and I think that's really important. Absolutely. What a great discussion.
Any more closing words before I close with what I have here?
I just like what you say, Claudia, and I'm doing really these, like, try to be centered and also working on myself to not needing someone else's love, like to fulfill myself, because that's what I did in the past. And I realized after some years that when I actually loved more myself, that this love that this person was giving me, in fact, was giving me some glasses, or put like I was not seeing the truth. In fact, when I was in this, I was with her for this love. So really being centered on yourself, having enough love for yourself, and to meet someone that will complete but not fulfill you. And it will be a good match, but it's not there to fulfill you. And what I like also, it's in the relationship, because I have some really important point that I need my girl to fulfill with me is, for example, sport or different activities. And one good thing can be, but in this time it can be complicated, but it's also going to these activities, sharing this moment together, and see how the other person is reacting, is behaving, and so on. Because for me, it's also important that this person like matches with some like activities of things I'm doing, and seeing a person out of like social place, like a bar or whatsoever, you can see really how the person is. Because if you like to do climbing and this stuff, and you just realize it after 5 years because you didn't allow yourself to do this kind of activities with the person, in fact, you will see only one face of the person. I see the person as, like, a diamond. We have different faces, and it's truly to do different activities or things to see the different faces of this diamond.
Totally. I can totally see where you're coming from, Xavier. One thing I would actually like to add here, and this is why I raised the voice again. You said something about the other person completing me. We're all complete. Each and every one of us. There's no requirement for another person to complete us. That is my absolute conviction. And, to say it in other words, a relationship with somebody else is the icing on the cake. I'm the cake myself. So it's, this completion, that could, if we establish that in our thoughts, could always make us feel there's something missing.
Yeah, that was a misspell from my English. That's
okay.
why I say after I say matching. That's why I say it's not completing, because it's not fulfilling. Of course. Yeah. It's,
okay, get you.
Yeah. I totally
thank you.
agree with you. Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. So I want to say, really, I think it's really interesting topics that we talked about tonight, and what I retain really from this podcast is really about knowing yourself, knowing your value, working on yourself first before you can be happy with somebody else. And this is something that can take a long time for some of us. We may repeat some patterns because we don't know any better, and we may end up in a situation where time runs, and then we end up meeting the same wrong people again. But again, this is what I'm doing this today. I think we all need more guidance on how to be more centered with ourselves, and to help us also find that person that would be great for us, And again, there's no one perfect person, but just someone that's right for us. I think it's really what I get from this. And really, I wanted to finish with a quote from Cheryl Sandberg. So she's someone that's quite active out there, and she works for Facebook, I believe. So she said something very interesting. She said, when looking for a life partner, my advice to women is date all of them. The bad boys, the cool boys, the commitment phobic boys, the crazy boys, but do not marry them. The things that make the bad boy sexy do not make them good husbands. When it comes time to settle down, find someone who wants an equal partner, someone who thinks women should be smart, opinionated, and ambitious, someone who values fairness and expects, or even better, wants to do his share in the home. These men exist, and trust me, over time, nothing is sexier. So this is a quote from Cheryl Sandberg. So I think what she says is interesting. It's really looking at it from a different perspective, and maybe getting out of this whole, men are this and women are that, and everyone is built to do certain tasks, and really looking at it as really being together to help each other, to be a shoulder for each other, to be supporting each other through business, through the home, whatever needs to be done, really, to make the relationship comfortable. Okay, well, again, I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and it was a great chat. I'm sure more people will watch it. You may get some messages. I will make sure to post your profiles below so people can check your great businesses that you run and companies you work for, and see who you are, a bit more about your profiles. It was great to have you on board. Feel free to maybe participate again in the future. Who knows? Maybe we can do more podcasts individually. I think it would be interesting to get more in depth, maybe into what you do, because I know each of you is working on certain aspects of relationships. So I think it'd be interesting.
Thank you, Isabel, for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all.
And you. Take care.